bought a NAS, a network attached storage device. I bought the Synology ds218 Plus. First of all, the obvious, a NAS is different to a hard drive enclosure. A simple hard drive enclosure attaches to your computer. Your operating system recognizes it as an internal drive. It doesn't have any clever features, although it may well be RAID or something like that, but it doesn't have any clever features as you will get in a NAS. Obviously attaches to your network rather than your computer directly, but it's also a server. It's a clever little unit. It's got its own little brain, its CPU, its hardware, its motherboard, all the rest of it, and it's very, very flexible. You can, of course, use it as though it was some sort of attached enclosure, in that you can map it as a normal drive in your operating system. So it covers everything. Obviously, it's more expensive than buying an enclosure, but the flexibility it gives you and what you can do with it is massively bigger. So why have I bought the Synology? I bought Synology because Synology are one of the most recognized brand names in NAS environments. They have some of the best operating systems. So you can build your own NAS, of course. You could put all your hardware together and it's going to be a lot better than you're going to get in a standalone unit like this. But you're going to have to put your own operating system on. Most people will use FreeNAS. But the maintenance involved and the learning curve is far greater than if you get a standalone unit, which comes with its own updates and it's pretty much taken care of. There is a learning curve, but it's a lot easier than having to maintain your own built server. So why have I gone for this particular model? Well, first of all, you're going to have to ask yourself how many drive bays I want. I think I only needed 2. I think that's going to cover all my uses. You can get massively huge hard drives these days anyway, although the couple I put in here at the moment are only 4 terabytes each. But obviously the 2 bays are cheaper than the 4 bays. I was looking at how much these things cost, and they're not particularly cheap, but then what is it these days? So the 2-bay NAS from Synology, it's going to be the 218, covered by several different models, and it can be a little bit confusing. So I've got the 218 Plus, which they're going to term the performance unit. Performance because it comes with the Intel CPU. They do a 218J, which is the budget option. They do a 218 Play, which is kind of the multimedia budget option. They do a 218 without any other thing after the 8 to signify what it is, and that is something between the J and the Play, and obviously the 218 Plus. The real difference obviously is all about the hardware. This particular 218 Plus comes with 2 gigs of RAM. The others come with 2 gigs or less. This comes with the Intel CPU, the others don't. A couple of them come with the Realtek CPU. This supports 4K transcoding, which I want because I'm going to use it as a multimedia server. But there is a weird thing that the performance model, because it's Intel, supports 4K at 30 frames per second. The Play and the 218 support 4K at 60 frames per second. The downside of that is that because they're not Intel, they're not supported by Plex. And obviously, for most people, Plex is what they're going to want to put on this NAS. It's not the only option. Synology do their own media server, and they also do a video station. The media player being a server for DLNA, and the video station being an app-to-app piece of software. So the media server you just fire up, and all your DLNA enabled devices like your smart TV, etc., will find it on the network and they will play from it. But it doesn't have all the features that you would get from a standalone media server like their video station, or which obviously, but you have to use app-to-app and Plex, which does support DLNA, but if you use it app-to-app, it's far more feature-rich than all these other alternatives. As I was saying, because Plex doesn't support the non-Intel CPUs, I have to get the 218 Plus. But just to say, if you're not using Plex, the others are still an option because the hardware transcoding is 60 at 4K, is 60 frames per second. Now, I do think I haven't looked at it that closely because I'm using Plex. I do think there's an issue where that hardware transcoding, non-Plex, is offline rather than real time. Don't quote me on that, and I don't know all the circumstances, but I have seen comments about that not working as expected. They also do a 718, which is basically the 218 on steroids. Well, because it's got quad core, and that's the Celeron J3455, as opposed to which is the J3355. So that's quad core, runs at 1.5 gigahertz. This is Dual core runs at 2 gigahertz. So single threaded, not much in it. But in terms of 2 versus 4 cores, it's far beefier. It's the performance model, 718, but it's almost twice the price. It's a lot of money. And it's still only a 2 bay at the end of the day. Although you can extend all these Synology NASs, they do a unit where you can put other hard drives in and it's plug and play. You plug it into your NAS. But some of them, you can't expand your whole RAID or your whole storage with the external hard drives as though they were all on the same unit. Some you can, and some you have to use them as separate volumes. So watch out if you're thinking, oh, well, I can still extend it with one of their extendable enclosures. They will come with a 2-year warranty. In terms of pure specs, they rate this at write 113 megabytes per second and read at 112 megabytes per second. Personally, when I've had this in a RAID 0, I was getting bursts of 136 megabytes per second. Comes with 2 gigs of RAM, but you can very, 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 very easily expand that to 6 gigabytes because the extra RAM slot is just there. So before you put your hard drives in, you just put a stick of RAM in there. Very easy. You've gone from 2 to 6 gigs. Now, this is also not clear. Officially, this is expanded up to 6 gigs of RAM because they don't want you opening it up. The second stick is just on the other side of that, but you've got to take the whole thing apart to get to the motherboard to put the stick of RAM in. Obviously, that's going to void your warranty. So technically, they're saying the maximum you can put in any one slot is 4 gigs. You can't open up, so you've got a total of 6 gigs. Now, unofficially, everybody says you can put up to 8 gigs per slot, and nobody seems to have issues doing that. So if you wanted to open the whole thing up, you can go up to 16 gigs of RAM. If you don't want to open it up, 8 gigs plus the 2, you can go to 10 gigs of RAM. Now, I'm saying I haven't tried that. I'm saying from what I'm reading, everybody seems to agree that's absolutely fine. But officially, supports 6 gigs of RAM, very easy to do, because the empty slot is accessible directly from the drive bay. So the unit itself, you get a fan. I have to say it's pretty quiet. There are high, low and medium levels that you can set it to. I've got this on medium. It's not a problem at all. Some of these cheap NAS fans, they're like wind turbines and they're terrible. This is not noisy at all, pretty quiet. Normally the first thing I do is do a fan upgrade, but no need on this. As you can see, we've got 2 USB 3 ports. Your Ethernet port, it's 1 gig Ethernet. I'm saying it like always, that's not a shock to anyone. Well, because we're starting to get 10 gigabyte Ethernet connections on these NASs, but not at this price level, obviously. I'm just saying that is 1 gig. You've also got an eSATA port down there, just below the USBs. You've got your reset switch just there. By the way, if you did want to reset this, you press it once for about 4 seconds, you'll get 1 beep. That will reset basically your server credentials. If you then immediately press it again, hold it down, you'll get 3 beeps. That resets the whole operating system and you can do a clean install. You've also got a Kensington lock. Then on the front, you've got your on-off button, obviously. You've got a C button. Now you don't get this C button, which stands for copy, on all of the models. So that's something, if personally, I don't think it's a huge deal to me, but if this, what they call USB copy button is a big deal, and you're choosing between models, make sure you're getting the model with a USB copy button on the front there, because you've handily also got a USB front port. So you the idea behind it is you just stick a USB drive in there. In software, you set up what action you want to happen when you press this C button in terms of what you want copied from your USB drive and where you want it copied to on the NAS drives themselves. So it is pretty handy. Here's a nice feature because it's, you know, one push and you've basically, it's like running a macro. So I can see how that would be something you want to make sure if you're choosing between models. So you've got indicators for each disk, make sure they're going okay. You've got an indicator to make sure you're connected nicely to your LAN. And you've got a status LED, which changes color depending on whether there's a problem or not. The nice thing about this NAS is if you use 3.5 drives, they are toolless. So you simply pull off the sides and that's how the drives are secured. If you're using 2.5 inch drives, you will have to use screws. There are screws that come with it and you'll just screw them in on the tray. But for 3.5 drives, it really is hassle-free. You slot in there. And then you just click the sides back on. So it's completely toolless. And that's secured. To insert your drives, you just make sure you got it the right way round. I think it only goes in one way anyway. But obviously, your connectors have got to make a connection with the connections at the back. You just slide it in and it'll clip in. Really, really easy. Now I will say, one thing of note, if you're going to use 2 drives, be aware that when you set it up, you won't get the option to how you want to set up your drives. That is to say, it will by default set 2 drives to Synology Hybrid RAID mode 1. So you'll only get the capacity of 1 drive. Obviously, Synology have their own version of RAID. They call it SHR, Synology Hybrid RAID. It is pretty neat because, unlike RAID itself, where you have to match size of drives, otherwise you're going to lose a lot of capacity, you can mix and match different RAID size. Now, I know it's not a big deal because this is only 2 bay, but when you've got 4, 8, more than that drives, it's a huge deal that you can mix and match the size of drives because it works in chunks. So it uses chunks the size of your smallest drive. And if you're going to lose capacity, I think it's only the smallest chunk on that drive. Obviously, what you lose depends on how many drives you've actually got in there, what mode you're using. But because it works in chunks, you don't lose the complete capacity over and above the smallest drive. So that is actually a huge deal. So it's something you probably want to use if you've got certainly more than 2 bays. But don't, if you want to, like I want to use RAID 0. So only put 1 drive in to start, otherwise you're going to have a whole nightmare of going through, taking out a volume again, and it doesn't like it if you do that, and then you've got to set it up. So the easiest thing is 1 drive in, if you know you're going to use RAID 0, run through the whole process and set up your preferred RAID once you're into the operating system itself. Now, the thing is about Synology is it has a really nice operating system, really easy to use. It looks really good, and it supports a lot of native software. Of course, you're not tied to native software. For a start, you can run your virtual machines on this and install what you want on that. You can also use a Docker container. If you can run them natively, it's better. Plex runs natively on the server, but I will say don't use their native software because it's 32-bit and you need to download the 64-bit to get the hardware transcoding option. I will point out it does come with a quick setup guide in the box, and also what else is in the box, which is plain brown packaging, I must say. You get your installation guide, which basically tells you to use findsynology.com when you've got everything set up on your browser to locate the NAS on your network to do the setup. They do give you a cable, but I like to immediately get my own Cat6, Cat6A cables to use. See, it comes with a separate power supply. And once you've read your quick start guide, you go in and start firing up your browser. Obviously, having already put in at least 1 disk. So after 8 minutes, we're ready to set it up, give it a server name. Can be analyst reviews, user newbie1, password, very weak. Options: install the latest DSM, install important updates automatically, notify me, and let me do it manually. I'll let it do it automatically. Run smart tests to check the health of my hard drives. Yep. Enable bad sector warnings. Yep. Gonna skip quick connect for now, but well worth doing. It's gonna allow you to locate, make contact with your NAS server from any browser outside your network with a simple URL. Share my Synology devices network location to allow me to locate it via findsynology.com. Gonna give that a miss for now. They need my help. I'm gonna say no thanks. So, this is your desktop. As it says, access all built-in and install packages from the main menu. So, that's your package center, your control panel, your help system. Do not automatically launch next time, thank you very much. and your icons for all your installed packages are up at the top, and you can drag them to the desktop. So if I want storage manager, drag it there. Resource monitor, there you go. As you can see, my disk station is working well. Use up 10% of my RAM, 2% of my CPU at the moment. If you wanted to install further packages, you would go to your package center. Installed up here, and available packages down here. Now, of course, you don't have to use just the packages they're giving you. You can use a dock container, but these are the ones natively available for download. Lots of backup software, chat software, DNS, email, cloud syncing. Everything is really covered. Proxy server, Radius server, snapshots, WebDAV server. I'm interested at the moment in Plex, which is here. Now, natively it comes with a 32-bit version. You're going to need to separately download the 64-bit version and make sure it's for your Synology. I should have mentioned, of course, you do get a nice little cover, which is also toolless, for the front of the NAS. Put it the right way around, which doesn't actually clip with anything. It's kind of sticky. I don't know exactly how it sticks there, but it does just stay in place. But it's not going to take much to knock that off, to be quite honest. In terms of starting and stopping your NAS, your on-off button is down there. Hold it, and it will start flashing. When it's ready, it will give you a beep. So when you set it up initially, you'll wait for the beep and then go into your browser. Once it's set up, you know to listen out for the beep that everything is okay. Also, you look for your status LED. I mean, it's not that quick, is it? It's taking a little moment to start. So now it's basically all right. It's coming up with the status LED, but it's going to be saying there's a drive missing because, of course, I didn't think it through. Ah! It's set up to RAID 0, and that means there's a drive missing. So I hope I haven't messed anything up. I turn that off, and it's the same thing every time you turn it off. It goes through its handing off process, and then it's off. Just point out, I did talk about if you're going to use Plex and you need hardware decoding, you need the premium subscription. Of course, it will software transcode, but that's going to max out your CPU. It's not really going to be viable for at all, to be quite honest with you. It will bring your NAS to a standstill. I'll also say, when I first set it up, some of my icons were missing for some of the basic modules, like the storage manager. It turned out permissions weren't set properly. So if you've got icons missing and you can't find them, make sure you've given yourself permission. If you go into Control Panel, Advanced Permissions, you can check all your permissions down there. Other things that I forgot to mention that obviously will be of note, you can choose to have everything encrypted, so no problem of prying eyes on your data. It does run virtual machines. I mean, it is basically limitless what you can do once you've got yourself a NAS. So, you know, you can run your virtual machines, you can use it for your time machine backups if you're on a Mac and stuff like that. But, you know, there is a whole host of native backup applications that you can use. I'm pretty happy with it. Just to say, it's not the fastest in terms of the hardware. You know, it's probably worth upgrading the RAM. And if you really want a smooth running Plex server, you may be wanting to think about either the 918 or the 918 Plus or the 718 Plus, but you're going to be paying a lot more money. So I hope you got something out of my video. I did buy it for myself. I just thought I'd share some of my thinking behind it, and I hope you got something out of it. Thank you for watching.
UK